Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank my colleagues for joining me today and taking this important step to hold President Biden accountable for his actions, or lack of actions, I should say. He's really had a complete failure to secure our southern border. The numbers don't lie. Biden's border crisis is a humanitarian crisis. And it all started when the Biden regime began rolling back President Trump's firm and effective border policies. The result of Biden's mismanagement is staggering. From 1,400 children in HHS custody under President Trump to 22,000 unaccompanied minors in Joe Biden's custody. Under President Trump, only 3 known murderers tried to cross our southern border last year. Under Joe Biden, we've already seen at least 40 known murderers try to enter our country. In President Trump's last month of office, Border Patrol released just 18 illegal immigrants with notices to appear. But last month alone, Biden released over 26,000 illegal immigrants into our communities across the country, giving them free bus rides and plane tickets. In the McAllen airport, I personally saw multiple groups of illegal aliens with manila envelopes with instructions on how to get to their final destination on an airplane. Do these illegal aliens have ID? No. I need an ID to board a commercial flight, but American Airlines wasn't requiring those that day. Biden released these 26,000 illegal aliens into our communities with our tax dollars. The NTAs grant illegal immigrants who cross our border illegally legal standing to remain in our country and begin receiving taxpayer-funded benefits. Sex offender apprehensions have doubled, and drug smuggling arrests have tripled. Enough fentanyl to kill every American 4 times over has been intercepted by Border Patrol in just the first 4 months of the Biden regime. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and this entire regime are endangering the American people. I can't think of a more inhumane policy approach to our southern border than to incentivize children to be used as pawns by the cartel. That's exactly what's happening. And Biden's policies are assisting and enriching the cartel. 1/3 of the girls sent on this dangerous journey are sexually assaulted. I saw these girls when I was down at our southern border. I saw the women. I saw the infants swaddled in Mylar blankets. 1 in 3 women have been sexually assaulted. The continued assault that is happening today is horrific. And instead of calling this what it is, a full-blown humanitarian crisis, and working to end these atrocities, President Biden passed the buck to cackling Kamala when he tapped Ms. Harris as border czar. Her work on the border is non-existent. It's a joke, and even she laughs. But it's not funny. This administration has not lifted a finger to end this crisis and secure our southern border. They must be held accountable. And that's why today I am proud to lead my colleagues in filing a bill to censure President Joe Biden for his dereliction of duty and failing to secure the southern homeland. He has refused to enforce the laws that Congress has passed to secure our border. He has refused to visit the border. His border czar, Kamala, has failed to visit the border. his Secretary of Homeland Security, is lying to the American people, saying that our border is closed. Meanwhile, this administration is dumping fuel on this fire by flying illegal immigrants from Central America at taxpayer expenses and allowing tens of thousands of illegal immigrants to enter and remain in our communities. Girls are being assaulted. Children are being abandoned at the border. Families are self-separating because of Joe Biden's policies. Children 6 years of age and under may cross with an adult, but 7 years and older are sent back. So parents are choosing to self-separate from their children, putting their children in the hands of the cartel. And then this administration reunites them in another area of the country on the other side of the border. Our law enforcement has been overrun. In speaking with one Border Patrol agent, he said, "We had a plan, but like the famous saying goes, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face." And the Biden regime has punched our Border Patrol agents in the face. I would like to now, let's see who's here. I would like to now pass this on to Jody Heiss. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to seriously say a huge thank you for you being here and for Lauren Boebert and leading this effort. This is so critically important. Now look, the bottom line, our southern border is in absolute chaos under this current administration. The open borders policy of the Biden administration has without question created a humanitarian catastrophe as well as a national security nightmare. And unlike President Biden and Kamala Harris, we have been to the border. We've been there. We've touched it. We've seen it. I personally have been to all 9 sectors of our southern border. It's stunning to me that this administration has yet to go there, although certainly we're grateful for the pressure that finally Kamala Harris has come out today saying that she is headed to the border. It is about time, but in her irresponsible delays, over 500,000 additional illegal individuals have come across the border while she has waited. The Biden administration has continuously tried to sweep this crisis under the rug. And let me tell you, we all understand, America understands, that President Trump left a secure southern border to this administration. And in less than 6 months, this administration, under the leadership of President Biden, has absolutely dismantled and trashed what was inherited and a secure border that we had. President Biden hasn't just failed to enforce the law, as is, by the way, his sworn constitutional duty, but he is actually implementing policies that undermine the law. How can this be? We have a president acting in this kind of way. And as he continues, frankly, to throw more fuel to the fire through these disastrous type policies, the American people are becoming more upset with each and every passing day. I know certainly that's the case in the 10th District of Georgia, and I would say everyone up here can share that one of the greatest concerns the American people have is what's happening on our southern borders. And it's time that we hold President Biden accountable. That's what brings us here today. I'm proud to stand with Lauren Boebert and my other colleagues as we are calling on this administration to be held accountable for the laws of this land. So the resolution basically does a few things. It calls for the immediate firing of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, absolutely incompetent open borders extremist. This resolution also disapproves of Biden's continual usurpation of powers of Congress to make de facto laws himself. It calls on Biden to enforce the immigration laws that we have and to secure our borders, and it censures him for his unprecedented failure to enforce the law, which again, as I've already said, is his constitutionally sworn duty. And so I'm grateful to stand with colleagues who understand what's going on and are doing all we can to hold this administration accountable to the rule of law. And with that, I would like to turn it over now to Madison Cawthorn. You got a mic? Okay. You bet.
Look at all this technology. This is incredible. If only we had this kind of technology at the border. You know, as my colleague Representative Heiss stated, Kamala Harris has just announced that she will be going to our southern border. But my problem with that is it's simply not enough to go to our southern border and show that you now realize that this is a crisis. The problem is we need action. The country is ablaze. An inferno roars on our southern border. A paramilitary organization in the form of two cartels engaged in the most despicable forms of human trafficking. Women and children are subjected to unimaginable atrocities. And this administration slumbers while America burns. 944%. 944%. That is the increase in illegal immigration from last year to this year. That is the difference between successful policies and failed policies. 6,000 illegal immigrants cross our border each day. And note that the Obama administration stated that if only 1,000 illegal immigrants were crossing our border in a single day, that it was then certified as a crisis. We now have 6 times that. 6,000 representing what is quite literally the worst domestic and humanitarian national security crisis our nation has faced in a generation. Our country is a nation of laws. We all agree on that. But it's led by a reckless lawbreaker. Biden not only refuses to protect our border through executive action, but he also spits on the laws designed to protect our nation. Ending catch and release and halting the border wall are decisions a leader makes when they want to lead America to ruin. For the first time in American history, we have a president who prioritizes napping over policymaking and ice cream over stemming a tidal wave of illegal immigration. I am proud to join my colleagues in denouncing Joe Biden's crisis of leadership. I am now calling for his censure due to his failure and inability to enforce our border security laws. This is of paramount importance that we have a secure border to create a secure nation. How can parents feel safe to send their children to school when they don't even know who's entering their country? How can our economy recover when we essentially have a welfare state that's been created over the last 2 decades, but now it's having a major influx of population coming into this country? My question for the Biden administration is, what are you going to do? It's simply not enough for you to go down to the border, Vice President Kamala. You need to take action. You need to save this nation and save our future. Thank you very much. And now I would like to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Troy Nels. So, but Louis Gohmert is here. It's a good thing for Troy's not here because that guy's an animal. Fight.
Yeah, and thank you, Madison. I'm proud to be your colleague, your Republican brother here. I'm glad to hear that the Vice President is going to the border, and because she's going to the border, I think we owe that to our former president and to Governor Abbott. They are going to be at the border next Wednesday. The president and Governor Abbott, I know personally, have been there previously. They know what's going on. They know well what's going on. And that's why Governor Abbott has taken the steps to try to put walls where they're not, where the President of the United States has stopped the building of walls and fences. We know that there's no better place to find tremendous hypocrisy than right here on Capitol Hill, because we know that because we've heard from the Democrats for a number of years, walls do no good, fences do no good, and then we've still got a fence with razor wire over the top of it around the Capitol, even though the chief of the Capitol Police has said there's no intelligence from any source that indicates any member of Congress is a threat to another member, yet still we have metal detectors around the House chamber. Well, that's for optics. Well, on the border, it's not a matter of optics. Anybody, including the president and vice president, that took an oath to support and defend the Constitution right now are violating that oath. If you will go look, come at 1 or 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning when I've been down on the border and I see what's happening, then you'll know the president is doing grave damage to this country and to Mexico. The most compassionate thing that we in Washington could do for Mexico and our friends to the south is to secure the border, stop the tens of billions of dollars that are flowing to the drug cartels that then use it to corrupt Mexico and keep them from being a top economy and having a wonderful place to live. The best thing we could do, secure that border. And then we help with compassion our friends to the south. But to continue as the president and vice president are, to allow this fluid border and the hundreds of thousands that are coming month after month, nearly 200,000 a month, that is a violation of their oath. It is as bad as it gets. You know, all you have to do is look at the current state of the law. I think it's true in every state that if you have something like a swimming pool that may draw children in there and you don't put a fence around it, then if something happens to the child drawn to what's called an attractive nuisance, then you are liable for the harm that comes to the people that come in without your protecting your border. And that's what's happening. We got people that are dying, women, you know, one estimate, 25% of the women that come are raped, often multiple times. And you've got people that have created this attraction that draws people to their detriment. And the Border Patrol will tell you, as they've told me, they're considered logistics by the drug cartels. And I said, like the commercial? Yeah. The drug cartels say, we get them to the border and the U.S. government ships them wherever we want them to go. And that's why we've been told that the cartel has active employees, really indentured servants, in every city around the country, because the U.S. government is often the one that ships them there from the drug cartel. So it would appear right now the best accomplices the drug cartels in Mexico have going for them is our current president, vice president. So that's why I appreciate my friend Lauren Boebert doing this, taking this stride, and so we are fully supportive. Is Ralph here? At this time, I want to yield to my dear friend, Andy Biggs.
Thanks, Louis, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. And I'm here in support of this censure resolution. I was pleased to see that finally the border czar, Kamala Harris, our vice president, is actually going to go down to the border. It's only been about 100 days, just under 100 days. I don't know, I think I've been down a half a dozen, maybe 8 times since she was appointed to be the border czar. Glad she's going to the southern border this time instead of the northern border. That's fantastic. Let me tell you what's happening on the southern border. When I was recently down there in the Yuma sector, nice, beautiful fence that this President Trump put up and that this president stopped the building on. You can go over to the area and you can see piles and piles of bollard fencing. Some of it's welded together into panels, getting ready to be installed. Some of it's just in the individual bollard piping. They're probably 10 grand a piece, which is why some of those bollard piping is being stolen. That's the least of the concerns. When you walk to the edge of that fence, that one fence, go down, just stoop around, you can find everything from Plan B, discarded, remnants of that, the environmental degradation from the garbage that's left all over the place around there. You go rooting through the garbage a little bit, you're going to find the boarding passes. They're going to be coming through Cancun. They're going to go through Mexico City on up to Mexicali. They're going to take an Uber ride over to the south side, just on the other side of the border, and come across. Guess what? They were there, last time I was there, just for a few hours. A constant group, not a group, but a constant stream of individuals and family units coming over. They weren't running. They just walked right up to the Border Patrol agents and surrender. To the tune of over 180,000 encounters. That's what they're calling them now, encounters on the border last month. Over the last 3 months, if you begin adding up the known gotaways and with the estimated gotaways, you're getting close to 1 million people. And this administration that inherited an operationally secure border with policies in place immediately rescinded those policies. They allowed this to go forward and are allowing it to go forward. The fact that Vice President Harris is actually showing up at the border is remarkable. The fact that you have a Secretary of Homeland saying that the border is secure. That is such a deception to the American people. It's outrageous. I think it's censorious conduct. Well, so let me just say this. You could solve, if this administration wanted to, they could solve this border crisis, this humanitarian crisis, this national security crisis by implementing probably 5 or 6 things very quickly. And in short order, this thing would be back to operationally secure. Let me tell you, number 1, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. Number 2, reinstate the Northern Triangle asylum agreements that we had and the other 12 other international agreements that were rescinded by this administration. Number 3, stop giving them CARES money as incentives to come across. Number 4, move your immigration judges, make them available on the border to deal with situations where there's an asylum claim immediately. Forget your backlog. You're overwhelmed right now. What you do is you have these individuals who are claiming asylum, grant them due process. Since over 90% are going to be found to be fraudulent, you can immediately remove them. That will help slow this down. Where possible, you reinstate the entire part of Title 42. You don't take the exceptions that this administration put in to Title 42. So individuals can be removed or denied entry based on health consequences. And then the last thing is, you know what would really help? If you had a president who had been standing up and saying, don't come to our border and come illegally. If you desire asylum, you should be showing up at our ports of entry the way international law prescribes, the way our own law prescribes. And this president should be saying, we're not going to let you in. We're going to send you home. Guess what would happen? The marketing of the cartels would have to change. People would start staying in their home countries, and this border crisis would come to an end. Because this administration, this president and vice president, don't want to stop this crisis. They want an open borders. You cannot be as incompetent as what we're seeing the results of. This has to be willful. That is worthy of a censure. I thank our friend Representative Boebert from Colorado for bringing this resolution forward, and all my colleagues that have joined in. With that, I'll yield back. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. We find ourselves here again begging and pleading with this administration to do its job. Never in the history of the country has a president been more derelict in his duty to keep the nation safe and secure at the border like this president. And we can go through the numbers as my colleagues before have done, but it is inexcusable to allow to the tune of a couple of million people to stream across this border illegally in this 12-month period, and to continue that. And we're calling for this is really an impeachable dereliction of duty. So it's minimal to say he should be censured for this, him and the vice president. Are they incompetent and they don't know what's happening? Or is it worse and they are complicit and willfully doing this to the country? So I join my colleagues in supporting this resolution to censure our president.
Hi, guys. Thank you for being here. I'm from Tennessee. I'm from the 1st District, and I'm not a border state. But if this continues, every state will be a border state. And I do want you to know that I'm going to talk to you as a mother and a grandmother. When I went to the border with Homeland Security and Ranking Member John Katko, what I saw was worse than what you would see on TV. These are precious children who have been sent across the border without their mothers, without their fathers. I don't know if any of you have children, but it's like my son sending my 4- and 6-year-old grandsons across the border by themselves. And that's a travesty. You know, when you talk to these Border Patrol agents, they're demoralized. They don't have enough help. 50% of their operating budget is spent on taking care of those precious children with formula, with snacks, with diapers. And when they pull 40% of their border agents off the border and put them in to process unaccompanied minors, what happens? What do you think happens to the drugs that flow across the border? They come over. The drug prices drop. And when I have roundtables with the sheriffs back home, they're saying, help us. Methamphetamine use is up by 40%. You see the fentanyl use up by 300%. As a pharmacist, I understand how devastating that is. So it can be fixed very simply. Just as I said before, you reinstitute the Stay in Mexico policy. Build the wall. We have everything we need. It's been funded. It's very simple. And I'm glad that Vice President Harris is going down. I hope she sees what I got to see. But just remember what I said. Every state will become a border state. And we are a land of laws. If Congress wanted to fix it, don't you think we should sit down and try to do that? It's easy to keep pushing that can down the road because if you don't fix a problem, that's job security. I'm new to politics. I'm used to being a problem solver. This gives me a righteous anger that we can't fix this, or really, we won't fix it. So, as I said before, it's an easy fix. You could do it overnight. Build the wall and reinstitute the Stay in Mexico policy. We are a land of laws, and lawlessness breeds lawlessness. And I just want you to remind you of that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Lauren, for helping organize this. It's good to be with you. My name is Troy Nails. I represent a district in Texas, Southwest Houston. I was in law enforcement for 30 years, served as a sheriff of Fort Bend County, the most diverse county in the entire country. And when we're talking about immigration law, lack thereof, I saw it firsthand as a sheriff. So I can share some experiences as it relates to my colleagues, talking about the increase of methamphetamine and the drugs and the crime that is being committed against the people of this great country. I've had opportunities to visit the border. I was in Laredo. I was in McAllen. I was in Yuma, Arizona. I was in San Diego, California. The border crisis we have is real. Is an open invitation. This administration have invited people not from just the triangle countries, but from around the entire globe to enter our southern border, our very porous southern border. Just last week, I was in Del Rio. And when you got Secretary Mayorkas saying the border is closed, it's kind of funny because I'm standing there and watching hundreds of people just walk across in that sector of Del Rio. And you're telling me the border's closed. Secretary, that's a downright lie, and you know it. I said on the news, if I put him on a polygraph machine, do you know what I mean by having a polygraph? He would fail it, because it's a lie. The vice president says she's been down to the border, Europe, all this other stuff. She needs to get down to the border, but if we're honest with each other, we know why she doesn't want to visit the southern border. because the tongue lashing she's going to receive from the mayors and Border Patrol and everybody else down there, they're going to say you are failing to do your job. But I'm going to give it another minute and talk about my law enforcement experience, about what a poor southern border will do to the American people, specifically the people that I had to protect as a sheriff in Fort Bend County, 850,000 strong. I had a guy like this. This is Mr. Zavala, everybody. Take a good look at him. Mr. Zavala killed a resident of Fort Bend County, and she was 81 years old. 81 years old. Her name is Miss Bowie. Minding her own business, crossing the street, and this knucklehead runs over and kills her and leaves the scene. Our detectives did a fantastic job finding this guy at a residence. He was sleeping. He was drinking. We arrest him to find out that he has been deported 6 times. Folks, 6. Think about that now. 6 times. You reporters ever ask your question? Ask yourself this question. How do you ever get deported from this country more than once? This guy has taken advantage of our poor southern border, and he did it for years, and finally, he killed an American. It's the federal government's responsibility. It's this administration's responsibility. It's the responsibility of Congress to secure our southern border. This guy should have never been over here the second time. And finally, he kills someone. And then I have to sit with her son and explain to him, I'm sorry what happened to Mom, but this individual should have never been here. We have a crisis at the southern border, and this administration puts the American people last. It's about damn time he starts putting the American people first. Protect the American people. You, sir, have the responsibility. You and your vice president have the responsibility to take care of the American people. And then it's law enforcement's responsibility to go out there and clean up this mess. It's county sheriffs in Texas across the country that are then charged to clean up the mess. And look at law enforcement today. Defund the police, all this anti-police rhetoric, the hatred against law enforcement. We have to deal with that, but yet we then have to deal with this issue about a poor southern border and having to deal with individuals coming into our country. Just a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, one of the deputy sheriffs from Fort Bend County, the sheriff where I was for 8 years, he had to shoot and kill an individual. And he was an illegal immigrant. He charged at the officer with a blunt object, and the officer had to take his life. So I'm telling you, the threat is real. And it's about time this administration starts waking up and putting the American people first. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Congresswoman Lauren Boebert for putting this together and introducing this important resolution to censor Joe Biden. Joe Biden has failed the American people, ladies and gentlemen. I just went to go vote on the House floor. I am a citizen of the United States of America, an elected member of Congress, and I had to go through more security to go vote representing my district than illegal aliens have to go through to invade our country every single day by the thousands. You know what Joe Biden could have done when he became president of the United States? He could have left the border alone because President Trump had everything in place to secure our border and keep our country safe. We just needed to finish the wall, continue to support Border Patrol and ICE, continue to arrest criminals and deport them. But no, Joe Biden has to make this about climate change and tell lies that people have to come to our country because of climate change. That is the biggest lie ever told. And no, it's not the election. It's climate change. People aren't invading our country because of climate change. They're invading our country because they want our jobs and our American lives. And that's the truth. You don't have to read, you don't have to know anything to see the truth that's happening every single day at the southern border. These are the facts. What did Kamala Harris, our vice president, find out when she went to Guatemala? She found out real quick that Guatemala is not buying her garbage and lies either. They're saying it's Joe Biden's fault, not President Trump's fault, that people from Guatemala are coming up and coming into our southern border. So let's be real honest. Let's also care about the Americans that have been killed by illegal crime and murder. committed by people that come into our country illegally? What about the angel moms and dads that have lost children, or people who have lost family members because illegals that don't belong in our country have killed them? Does Joe Biden care about that? And then lastly, let's talk about Vice President Harris and why she's finally decided to go to the border. Well, we all know the truth, don't we? It's because President Trump said he's going to the border. And Kamala Harris knows more than anyone that she's likely to be the presidential nominee in 2024. You see, this isn't too hard to see. It's just exactly what it is. Everyone knows that Joe Biden is failing and can't do the job as President of the United States. So I want to again thank you, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who's headed back to the floor to go vote, for this important resolution to censure Joe Biden. And I'll add to that, he doesn't need just censured, he needs impeached. Thank you very much. All right, good job, Lou.
The rule is you have to have questions.
I'll take questions.
If you don't mind,
Come on, Congressman Gomer.
to be able to speak at this podium, you have to be willing to accept our questions.
Oh, I'm here, ready, go ahead.
I'll start. I want to talk about the timing on this from your perspective. You're bringing up the lack of visits to the border. Vice President Pence didn't visit the border until a year after he became vice president. President Trump, it was August of his first year as president. Those are dates after this current date. And this administration has only been in office for over 6 months. A censure resolution is a very serious thing. There's only been one president who ever was formally censured. How much time should an administration be given to try and figure out a major policy like immigration? Why isn't 6 months? Why should it be done in 6 months? And how is this not a double standard when other administrations took?
Actually, I'd like to say there's a big difference in President Trump's administration and border policies versus this administration's presidency and border policies. The Joe Biden administration is ripping our border wide open, and before he even became president, invited people, come on in, the door's open. He also stopped construction of the border wall. He's defunding Border Patrol. He is completely taking all power away from ICE to arrest and deport people. So it's a completely different scenario where President Trump's policies were to secure our southern border. And I think Congressman Gomer would like to add to it.
Where I was going.
Yeah.
But why is 6 months is enough for an administration to figure out border security?
When President Trump took office, he had not invited people to come in here illegally. He had not given indications that there would be rewards for coming in illegally. And he immediately began to figure out what could be done to slow things down and to secure the border, and he was working on them. So it's entirely different. If you were trying those two presidents in court, say in a civil suit, if they were eligible for that, for their actions as president, you would have Vice President Biden, now President Biden, who took active steps to lure people into this country illegally, and you don't have that at all with President Trump. Now, to be fair, in President Biden's case, if he were being tried, for attractive nuisance and the damage that's done, the deaths that have occurred, he may well be able to get out of that with an insanity defense that he really had no clue what was going on. I don't think Kamala Harris would have that defense, and President Trump would certainly not. But as our former White House physician has said, this president has some real mental issues that need to be evaluated. But nonetheless, whether he does or not, people are being harmed. The American people are being harmed, and it needs to stop. And this president has taken no steps, none, to secure the border, and in fact has done the opposite, like Margie was saying. So you can't just look at how long before they went to the border. This president had it figured out, and he wasn't out there saying, oh, I've been to the border, when he had not, saying, oh, well, I hadn't been to Europe either. He was about fixing the problem, and this president has been about creating the problem.
This question is for Congresswoman Boebert, since this is your
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Thank you.
How would you compare this censure resolution to the censure of Andrew Jackson in 1833?
This censure resolution is to hold Joe Biden accountable. What we are seeing right now is an absolute crisis. And I think the reason we haven't even seen the border czar, the tapped border czar, go down there is because she will have to admit that this is a crisis. I have looked into the eyes of the children who are down there, the children who have been stripped of their shoelaces because we don't know if someone's going to harm them or if they're going to harm themselves, the children who are wrapped in Mylar blankets. And this censure resolution needs to be addressed now. I think, as you heard earlier today, it's actually very light and it's a very light action to censure him. This is actually worthy of impeachment. And that is what we should be doing right now. But we are taking this step to put him on notice and hold him accountable for what's going on at the border.
But since President Jackson was the only one ever censured, went all the way through the process, censured by the Senate, I want you to contrast it. I mean, this is rare, as you point out. So I want to get an understanding of why this rises to that level of what happened to Andrew Jackson in the 1830s.
This rises to the level of censure resolution because it is affecting our entire nation. This should go all the way through the Senate, and I would hope that the Senate would actually agree with us and pass this to hold them accountable. Yes.
I had a quick question.
If you could, say your name here with.
It's Andrew Solomon of Forbes. You've been pretty candid that Republican leadership is not a huge fan of some of your procedural tactics. Are you concerned at all? I mean, this has been rolled out with support from a dozen Republicans. Not exactly the kind of backing that leadership endorsed proposals usually get when they're first announced. Are you concerned that this is going to exacerbate tensions within the Republican conference about how best to go after President Biden and Democrats?
I respect our leadership greatly, and I think Leader McCarthy has done a great job of leading this conference. I'm not afraid to utilize the tools that we have available to us in the minority. I am an elected lawmaker, so this is very much in my lane to introduce this, and I would hope that leadership would join us in this. I think we are closer to 20 of my colleagues who have signed on to this now, and we are still bringing more people on as well. But right now, my job in the minority is to expose the corruption that's going on, expose inaction that is going on in this administration, and really to get in the Democrats' way and tell the American people, communicate to the American people how I am getting in their way. Some of the procedural moves that aren't favored by all are favored by the American people. When I go back home and I ask my constituents if they are aware that substantial legislation passes the House of Representatives without a single member of Congress voting for that legislation, they can't believe it. I ask for a show of hands. How many of you know that legislation is passed by unanimous consent in the House of Representatives? No hands go up. And we are there to make sure that there's a roll call vote on that legislation, so the American people know exactly where their representative stands on a particular issue.
Obviously, the best way to get a vote on this is to get Leader McCarthy to bring it up as a frivolous resolution. Are you in discussions with leadership? Do you see a realistic chance of getting the whole party on board with this?
There are a couple of different steps. Of course, there's a privileged resolution, or we could even have a petition to get members of Congress to sign on. I currently have a discharge petition right now for another piece of legislation. It's really unfortunate that the Democrats control the floor schedule the way they do, and I think that's a very large disadvantage to the American people who elected representatives to vote on their behalf, to be their voice in our nation's capital, and we aren't even permitted to vote on Republican legislation. So the only kind of bipartisan work that we see here in the House of Representatives is if a Republican votes on a Democrat bill. We hear all of this talk about unity from Democrats, but unfortunately, that's not reality. That is not what we see here. When I was on the campaign trail, I was asked tough questions, and a regular question that I received was, will you be bipartisan? Will you work with Democrats? I have not yet seen Democrats work with Republicans. And it's very frustrating that we don't even have an opportunity to bring our legislation to the floor to have a vote. And if a privileged resolution is brought to the floor, they table it. Straight up and down. And it's defeated. Now we are in the middle of a vote session, so I'm going to ask one more question. Yes?
Yeah, Robert Draper with the New York Times. A question for both of you all. We just heard from Congressman Boebert that he believes that what's happened at the border crisis is basically the result of President Biden's incompetence, his cluelessness, his lack of mental acuity. And but we heard from a couple of your other colleagues who've already left that in fact this is quite intentional, deliberate, and willful policy. I'd love y'all's thoughts on this, and if you think it's the latter, what is the actual motive then that underlies President Biden's deliberate policy, if that's what you think it is?
I do believe that this is deliberate. I also believe that President Biden should have a cognitive test. I agree with my colleague Ronnie Jackson, who has demanded a cognitive test of the president. He had to perform one for President Trump when he was President Trump's doctor. But I do believe that this is deliberate, and that's why we're not seeing any real solutions, any real answers at the border. To all of us, this is a crisis. To the ranchers who are having their property destroyed by the illegal aliens that are crossing, breaking their fences, harassing their livestock, to the cities that are being flooded now, inundated with illegal aliens. This is a crisis. But to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, this is mission accomplished. Our role as Congress is to provide oversight. And that is what we were doing. We are the check and balance right now on this executive branch.
Why are you doing this instead of... What do you mean? What do you think the president's motive is, and what underlies all of this?
I believe much of the motive is to create chaos in our country. That is what's going on at our southern border. There is no respect for law enforcement from this administration, from Democrats. We've seen this for the past year. They can begin to say all the fluff that they want, that they suddenly support community policing or police agencies, but that's not what we have seen. In fact, we have law enforcement officers who are not signing up for the job even anymore because they understand that their role is not respected and it is not backed by Democrats. We see a lot of law enforcement officers, agencies that are not able to recruit new law enforcement officers. So this is creating chaos, and it's overwhelming our Border Patrol agents.
You said a moment ago you should be doing impeachment. Why this instead, then?
This is where we're starting.
Yes, I think to me, I see it as a means to the end goal. You see, it's not just Joe Biden's policy, it's the entire Democrat Party policy, because the end goal is socialism. It's not about being an American party that cares about our country, cares about our borders, cares about our laws, cares about our businesses, cares about our children and our country's future. They have a different outlook on policy, and it's quite the opposite of half of our country, patriots, people who love our country. It's very much the opposite of my policies and views. It's very much the opposite of my great colleague here, Congressman Boebert. And you have to have systematic destruction, and that's absolutely what we're seeing in our country. We've seen it all year long. We've seen our country shut down, our economy shut down. Dr. Fauci tell us how we need to wear masks while he's emailing his friends and saying they don't work. Telling President Trump and on CNN saying millions of people are going to die, while he's also saying in his emails that he expects it to be several 100,000 people. We've seen it with the full, completely ignoring Antifa and BLM riots, destroying cities all year long, attacking American businesses, looting them, violence in our streets, attack on our police officers, wearing them down, and then Democrats saying they want to defund the police and fund social workers to show up when there's crime and terrible problems. And then you talk about the border. Well, what's happening at the border? We've got gangs, MS-13, This is great policy for the cartels. That's big business. That's something I definitely understand as business. And this is one that is just feeding the cartels and funneling so much money down there, all down throughout Mexico, into Central America and beyond. But it just goes all over the world, doesn't it? Because anyone knows that they can get a plane ticket, make their way into one of the countries south of the border, and pay a fee and get in, right? So this is systematic destruction to our country. And it's also American tax dollars that are being used to pay for these people once they get here. Because let's be real, they don't just cross over and stay in the town where they come in. They get shipped, they get sent, they get flown to cities all over America. So you see, it's a completely different outlook on what America is supposed to be. And that's the Democrats' view, is socialism. And socialism, we all know, is a bridge to communism. And we have many members in the Democrat Party that you could definitely look at, read their bills, listen to what they say, and you could call them communist. But this is the difference, and I'm grateful, really grateful to Congressman Lauren Boebert for introducing this resolution, and I look forward to more to come. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we are in the middle of a voting block here. We started with several members, but unfortunately for them, they aren't allowed to wait more than 90 days to perform their job duties. So they have all exited and began voting, and we do have another vote. I do want to just finish with this. It is immoral and shameful to signal to poor and desperate people to break our laws, to send their children in the hands of the cartel, to send their daughters with the Plan B pill because they expect their daughters to be sexually assaulted on their journey, to cross our borders illegally, and then we will take care of them with our hard-earned tax dollars. It is immoral. It is shameful. Our Border Patrol agents need resources. They need funding. They need infrastructure, real infrastructure. They need a secure border. They need technology. They need our support. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris absolutely need to be held accountable for what we're doing. And I'm proud to introduce this censure resolution of President Joe Biden today. Thank you all so much for being here.
We do have one-pagers and copies of the bill text if anyone would like one of those too. Thank you all for coming. See you.
What science fiction in the childhood of the space age could have guessed the shape of reality? The Saturn V rocket. 3 stages, 28 stories tall, with 11 engines as powerful as all the waterfalls in North America combined. Years in the planning, months in the building and testing, the Saturn first stage lived but 2 minutes 41 seconds.
Houston, thrust is go. All engines, you're looking good. All right, Roger, you're loud and clear.
2 minutes, 41 seconds. Time to throw Apollo 40 miles up into the sky, and then an empty shell to fall back into the sea.
We got the intercept. Roger, we can